Wow. You folks really didn't like the way I went last time out, did you? Well, I mean, it has to go somewhere interesting, and it also needs to be something impactful. Hey folks, MasterCoX here. A while back, I decided to put this particular story on the back burner, due to the fact that there really wasn't much need to carry it on as far as I could see at the time. However, as has happened quite a few times over the years, you lot out there come up with some good ideas, and you were able to find a way to bring it back to the fore, and thusly provide a new lease of life to the story in a way that I originally didn't think possible. This story concerns the semi-retcon of the Goku Black arc within the What If Raditz Turn Good universe, where Future Ranch is now more of a thing, and what might happen if she were more integrated into the story than she was when that particular part came out at the tail end of 2017. Man, was it that long ago? Jeez. So, what if she joined Trunks in going to the past? With Future Ranch now ingratiated into the story with Trunks, she does contribute more, but more in the future timeline more so than the past. She stayed behind while Trunks went back to that past and did his best to help the Dragon team against Cell. Before now, I had Raditz coming to the future and never meeting Ranch at all because she didn't exist at that time, as that was the phase where I was really being quite hardy and just having Trunks' timeline in Z just not really changing. And it would always be Trunks coming back to the past to deliver Android news, nothing else. I was quite inflexible. Here though, that did change sort of, but what also changed was the level of darkness that arose from Goku Black still being a thing. In the last part, we initially covered Future Ranch dispatching their future Cell as Trunks went back into the past, thusly foregoing her desire to finally meet her father again in the past. She was actually being quite selfless. That cleanup duty goes as you would expect, and Cell is completely mullered by this future half Saiyan. This, for the moment, would be the best glimpse into the past that she would get, albeit it was actually created in this future timeline. But after that, Ranch and Trunks rebuilt the future with humanity, and finally got some time to spend some to themselves in privacy and solitude, for the most part. They took to the forest for a long while, and when they were ready, they were granted a chance to go to the sacred world of the Kais to train, and Ranch finally got to see her father again, her real father. But Launch was unfortunately lost to the masses of clouds around them, her soul roaming around somewhere, unable to retain its full cognizance, and heads off to the great beyond. Seriously, if you've seen Soul, the moment when they actually join the great beyond, they lose their form, they just become orbs, and then suddenly, that really freaked me out. After defeating Barbary and Deborah, Ranch and Trunks had kids of their own, Balsa and Greta. But their lives proved to be really short when Goku Black came a-knockin' on their door. With their children slain, this was enough to tip Ranch over the edge and end up being completely broken, going into Super Saiyan Rage for the first time without realizing it. Despite badly injuring Goku Black, Ranch's morale then was practically zero, leaving her a complete husk, mute and helpless, who just took herself to bed and kept herself away from everyone. We start the arc with Trunks fighting off Goku Black as he is once again looking for the resources needed to generate fuel for the time machine. He's actually quite close to finishing, but it still had been a really massive slog to try and get material without attracting attention. At first, thanks to Black being badly hurt, unlike the original, the search for the fuel at the beginning was relatively easily. Granted, there was always the underlying tension of maybe getting caught, but things were actually looking okay, mostly. However, when Goku Black did recover, his power was greater than ever. Trunks assumed that that must have had something to do with Goku's body, and the now regretfully convenient Zenkai boost. Not that Zamasu's consciousness would know, but he got lucky. If only Ranch had been stronger, or Trunks had joined in there and then, they might have actually been able to stop Black altogether and it would be all over. But at what cost though? Their children? But little did they know that Zamasu would have probably just come in and wasted them anyway. So actually this is probably for the better. Trunks, despite caring for his partner, who had been through a lot, did feel a twinge of resentment towards her, not being able to snap out of her funk and do anything. He understood that Losing their children was something no parent should ever have to experience, but if they didn't get a move on and sort out the future with so few people left, there wouldn't be a future to save. "Ranch, snap out of it, please," he would keep muttering to himself on each excursion. In fact, almost every waking moment. Finally, after a particularly nasty scrape with Black, which left Trunks with minor injuries, he'd had enough. He went to Ranch's bedroom and swung the door open. Ranch morosely turned her head towards the door and saw Trunks before turning away again. "Ranch, this has got to stop! It's been months since the incident, and we need to give it everything we have if we want to get out of this in one piece. Mai and the Resistance are doing their best with the limited gear they've got, but I can't hold the fort alone. I need your help. Please." Ranch remained silent, looking like a helpless, lost animal as she meekly moved her hands. She'd lost so much weight too, as well as muscle mass, in the months since their kids had been killed. Trunks wasn't even sure she could help due to her atrophy. Trunks cursed under his breath. He couldn't be fully mad at her. What could she do in this state anyway? He thought for a moment. The only way she could help is for her to go to the past as well. Maybe get some rest there and regroup. Perhaps do some training in the Room of Spirit and Time there. I mean, he had been considering using their own version of this in their own timeline, and they did go up there, but when they did get up there, Black had gotten there first and utterly decimated it, beyond repair. There was no Guardian either. Mr. Popo nowhere to be seen. Either he had escaped due to another realm, or he'd been eviscerated by their nemesis. Probably the latter, though. "Ranch," he said decidedly, "you're gonna come with me to the past." This made her head turn faster than before. "The past?" Realizing he'd finally gotten her to speak for the first time in weeks, Trunks nodded. "Yeah, you need to get away from here. You can't spend any longer in that bed. You're only hurting yourself. The only way we can make you better is to have some time away. In another time." Ranch looked curious, but albeit weary. She wasn't inclined to do anything anymore. But this ticket to the past, was the one thing she'd wanted for years. And now, that spark had risen up to the surface again. This was her chance. It hadn't really registered before now. She knew of the plan to go back in time, but she just assumed that Trunks would alone be the one to do so, as always. Now, she was getting to go too. At first, Trunks thought this platitude had failed like all the others, but without saying anything, Ranch shakily got out of bed, almost sometimes falling over, putting on a jacket which had been laying on the side of the bed for ages, collecting dust, as well as putting on 2 wristbands, each with the names of their children on it, made from the clothes they'd been wearing on that fateful day that they had been lost. "Let's get on with this," she said with a monotone, walking ungracefully towards the kitchen. Trunks smiled as she saw her walk her way downstairs. She still remembers the promise. With Bulma stunned to see Ranch up and about, the quest for fuel picks up pace, and thanks to the head start, the trio do have enough fuel for 1 round trip, and Bulma here is able to survive at least a little bit longer. Goku Black, unlike the original, had grown quite cocky, happily gorging on Ranch's despair. It was best to keep her alive and seeing her suffer rather than destroying their home. He would sometimes chuckle to himself and justify his actions to his compatriot. "I will not let her miss a moment of my plan coming to its fruition. She and that pest Trunks will be the first and last to see the reckoning." He was almost obsessed with the pair. As Zamasu sipped his tea, he would always worry about this newfound mania with these 2 seemingly unremarkable halflings, but so long as it led to the plan working out, he didn't mind it too much. With Capsule Corp left in one piece, for now, Trunks and a weak Ranch got into the time machine, the latter scrunched up next to her partner, which wasn't all that hard given her now smaller, emaciated frame. Bulma bade them good luck, and they headed for the past. And this is where the proper retcon begins. In the original What If, I sort of skated over this part of the story, but there are some key changes here which actually makes the first half of Part 10 actually work out normally. When the time machine is detected on Capsule Corp property back in the past, present Bulma is the first on the scene and spots Trunks, who she instantly recognizes, but then sees a girl that she doesn't, at least not for a few seconds. She then gasps and asks her son from the future, "Is that your Ranch?" "Yeah, she's in a bad way. She needs urgent medical attention. Can you help us?" Suddenly, Trunks could sense a number of powers heading their way. Goku recognizes Trunks instantly and greets them. But after all they'd been through, all they saw was Goku Black before them. Despite Trunks being more aware than in the original at this point, being a bit more mobile, both he and Ranch still flew into a massive frenzy and started attacking Goku, Ranch especially. She was screaming wildly, calling out Balsa and Greta's names, punching Goku with all of her strength, which had been lowered a lot thanks to her atrophication. Goku wasn't hurt at all, as Ranch's punches were way too weak to do any damage, really, but it was still enough to shock the Saiyan. But not long after it started, Ranch just collapsed to the floor. She was still too weak, and Trunks regained his senses. Huddled around the bed, the gang see Ranch wake up, and she then apologizes for her actions wearily. Raditz and Launch entered the room, and also with present Ranch. "Sorry we're so late getting here. We got the wrong room. What's all this about?" shouted Raditz, a little too loud for the situation. He then spotted what looked like Ranch on the bed. He then looks to that Ranch, then back to the bed, then his Ranch. "What is that, the future her?" he gasped, and then looked awfully upset. Despite having never seen her before, at least for a long time, at least he could remember, he had heard about her from Trunks, but to see her like this, even if it wasn't technically his daughter, it made him feel this primal sorrow which rarely made itself known on his usually goofy and daft face. He immediately rushed to her side, and she spotted him for the first time, as well as her mother. "Mom?" It had been years since she had seen them both. That time she came to the past and almost got rumbled. They didn't recognize her though. She had changed so much, looked so gaunt. "Kid," said Launch, "it's all right now. You're safe here with us." Despite her blonde hair and her sassy nature, she actually here sounded caring and docile. Meanwhile, present Ranch was utterly bowled over with this sight. She didn't know what to think. For now, she hung back and kept to the corner of the room, not sure what to do. Trunks noticed this and decided it was best not to press the matter further. After all, he had his own present self to meet yet, according to what Bulma had said. A couple of days pass, and while the trio of Goku, Trunks and Raditz headed for the future for the first time around, like in the original What If, Ranch is spending time regaining her composure and her strength after travelling back in time. One day, present Ranch plucks up the courage to knock on the door and enters to meet her future self. Similar to how the two Trunks talked, this meeting of minds is actually very fruitful. Future Ranch smiled, a rarity these days, and motioned for Ranch to sit down on the bed, and the two of them got to know one another. "What happened to you, big sis?" Present Ranch said with a question. "I guess I am your big sister in a way. Let's go with that. It's far less confusing. But in answer to your question, a lot happened." She was more willing to talk with herself, since it was herself in a way. "I lost something precious to me by that monster Black. After that, it was like a massive portion of my soul had been ripped away from me. I lost the two most precious things to me in a manner so callous and heartless that I never thought it was possible. No mere mortal could do something like that. I don't know what happened." "Two things? You mean that you had kids?" "Yeah, a boy and a girl." "And Trunks is the..." "Yeah." Ranch blushed profusely. So in the future, they actually did get together after all. Present Ranch's thighs squirmed a little and she looked very sheepish at the prospect of having twins. But she remembered that her manner right now wasn't exactly appropriate. But future Ranch simply laughed. A coarse and quiet chuckle, but it was the most that she'd laughed in ages. "Young love. Oh, I miss that. Can we use the Dragon Balls to bring your kids back or something?" "It's not as easy as that. Our Shenron's gone. And as for the Namekian dragon, we lost contact with them ages ago. We have no idea whether they're alive or dead. It's best to assume that Black took care of them before arriving on Earth. President Ranch felt really bad for her future self, but then an idea struck. Are you going to help Trunks and the others fight? From what I heard, you're pretty strong too. I was, but look at me. She got out of bed and showed off her skinny arms and legs, as well as touching her gaunt and pale face. I'm in no condition to fight. I can't even go Super Saiyan anymore. President Ranch stood up and looked determined. Well, that settles it. We're taking you to the Room of Spirit and Time. The Room of... Wait, you still have one of those? Yeah, don't you? Not for a long time, but even if I wanted to, what good would it do? I'm not in the mood to be trained by someone else. Not even Trunks. Sometimes the best way to heal is to get to know yourself. She then placed her thumb on her chest, the present Ranch. That being me. Future Ranch looked confused, but then got what she was saying. With that, the Ranchers left with the present one, leaving a note on the bed. She was taught very well about that, explaining where they had gone. When they arrived on the lookout, Dende bade them to the room and had heard all about the plan. He chose not to question it though, and reminded them that if they wished to get out of the room at any time, all they had to do was just walk out the door at any time. After all, there was no time limit being in there now. In the year they spent there, both Ranchers learnt a lot from one another. Due to her emaciated body, it meant that her power was lower than that of present Ranch at the moment. But as her muscles grew back once more and her focus shifted, the balance of power tipped back into the future's favour. As present Ranch said, sometimes the best thing to do is just to get to know yourself. This was the best thing that could have happened to her right now. Inside this chamber, there was no worry about Goku Black showing up, there was nobody else nagging at her, it was just herself. With each passing day, colour returned to her cheeks. She looked healthier, thanks to not only the selection of food in the fridge and the lack of outside stimulus bogging her down, it helped reset her mind away from her recurring nightmares of seeing her children die. Granted, that memory would never truly be extinguished, that's impossible, but she could at least try to compartmentalize it. Every night, after a good training session and nursing plenty of massive food babies from all the food they ate after some intense training, the two Ranchers would casually chat about life, how their futures panned out, and how each other's timelines differed. Our Ranch found this to be a fascinating year. She had learnt a lot about herself, and she felt like she'd grown up a little herself, gaining more of a sort of carefree vibe like her father had. After all, when in full flow, Future Ranch had a very roguish sense of humour, like Raditz did. When they exited, Trunks and the others were there to meet her, knowing where they were. When the two of them met eyes once more, they both smiled at one another and embraced. Trunks hadn't seen his Belle so well in months, and Ranch could once again put her pain aside and appreciate the here and now. Ranch, are you okay? How do you feel? Ranch thought about this for a moment. She turned to her present self and she nodded. I feel like it's time to take back our timeline. She looked determined and focused, her body ready to take down Black, whatever the cost. And that's where we're going to be leaving things for right now. So what do you folks think? Will Ranch be able to help the second attempt of the future, now her mind was on the way to recovery? Will Goku Black still rule out and the future be erased? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. And I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later!